Moving on, Juliet Can is a local stakeholder from Hackney Wick and Fish Island. She is a co-founder and director of Stour Space and Stour Trust. She's got a background in fundraising and consultancy and social innovation, and she's been doing some really fantastic work one-to-one with businesses to help them kind of access the grants that are available. So I'm going to pass over to her, and she's going to share a bit of an overview of the grant funding landscape, because there are a lot of sources coming forward that aren't from the government parts. But obviously, I mean, I'm personally finding the landscape and what's coming through every day quite confusing. So I think any kind of help on signposting is useful. Again, I'm recording this at the moment. I should have said that at the start. We won't record any questions. We'll edit that out at the end, so it's just speakers getting recorded. We'll put that up on our website after, and yeah, obviously I'll share slides with you all too. So yeah, Julia, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'll just share my screen with you, and I've also shared some of the links, a link to the various funds that I'm mentioning, so that if you want to, while I speak, you can just click on and have a look at them, and yeah, and sort of see if you have any questions. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Oops. Let's see if you can you see my screen, Luke?
I'm wondering if I make you the host, if that might be how it happens.
Let's see, I've got shared screen, but it's not coming up.
Okay, I'm going to make you the
host. Got it.
Oh.
Here we go.
There we go.
Excellent. So I'll start with the good news, I guess. The good news is that there is some money out there. Let me just see if I can make this bigger. If anyone can't see this, I apologize. Let's do that. And perfect. So the good news is that there is a bit of funding out there. I appreciate that a lot of the organisations that are on this call are of different sizes and sort of work in different sectors, but I'm hoping I can give you a little snapshot at the very least of where you can access some funding, mainly linked either if you're from the creative sector or also if you're a social enterprise working with frontline communities. I think this slides will kind of give you at least some pointers. Yeah, and also, previously, anyone who's sort of been a fundraising consultant, or you have the responsibility of fundraising within your organisation, you would know that it can be quite taxing and time-consuming to apply for funds. But the positive news currently is that most funders have actually listened and have made sure that their funding process and the application forms are actually quite easy to do. So you find that most funders are making sure the applications are roughly about 1 or 2 pages and will take you a couple of hours to complete. So it is worth trying to access these funds that are coming up. They are coming pretty quickly, so due to the fact that they are responding usually within 1 to 4 weeks, the deadlines seem to come almost weekly. So do keep your eye out on some of the funding lists that are out there. I'll share a few at the end, yeah, just keep your eye out and be very vigilant, probably weekly, to see what's available for you. As I mentioned, most funders are responding. So if there are opportunities to feed back to them, just as Matthew and Simon mentioned, if there are any questions at the end of the fund saying, how can we support you, do feel that you can add your experience and your voice to that, because there hasn't been a moment where funders are actually, listing more than now. So do feel that your time is worthwhile. To start off with, I'll start with eligibility. It can be quite confusing because some social enterprises might feel that funding is just for charities, but actually these fundings are quite broad. So if you're a social enterprise or a charitable company, obviously if you're a charity or a social purpose organisation or a community group, you can apply for a lot of the funding that's out there. Also be aware that most organisations can identify themselves as 1 or 2 of these. So you can be a charitable company and a charity and a charity. So just maybe if you have a board or if you're responsible for fundraising, just check that that your social enterprise fits within this criteria. Most funders are looking at your legal structures to ensure that you're eligible. So it's worth just being aware again of where you fit within the legal structures. For example, the Arts Council, before you actually apply, you have to go through an approval stage. So most funders will ask you to identify whether you're a charity, a company limited by guarantee, or you're a CIC. If you're a charitable incorporated organization, I actually haven't met many CIOs. So if anyone's on this chat that's on this webinar who's a CIO, I really want to meet you. But if you're a CIO, you're eligible for most grant funding, community benefit society, and constituted community groups. So that means you might just be a group, a member group organization that has a constitution but are not legally registered with the Charity Commission or the Companies House. Don't be put off. A lot of funders are actually keen to fund you because more often than not, it's these organizations, these sort of informal groups that actually are reaching frontline needs. So legal structure is quite important. A big tip for anyone who's going to apply to any of these funds, I would say that if you can get your M&As or constitution ready, and also your annual accounts or annual report ready, as well as a copy of your bank statement ready, that really helps you with the final process of actually submitting your application. What I found is that, you go through the application filling, and then you realize that you can't actually find where everything's filed. So it might be that it's sitting with a different staff member or colleague. So just make sure that's to hand, so you can just upload and meet some of the deadlines that are coming up quite soon. So if successful, when do I get the funds? Some good news again. As I mentioned, most funders are trying to turn around applications as quickly as possible, usually 1 to 4 weeks currently, which is incredible. If you compare to previously, where the average time would normally be about 12 weeks, sometimes 6 months, sometimes even longer. So actually, most funders are really keen that you get the money as quickly as possible so that you can utilize that to sustain yourself or meet the urgent needs that are currently being needs to be met by your organization for frontline and for your beneficiaries. Many funders have also signed something called the COVID-19 statement, mainly London funders, sort of committing that they would like to be as flexible as possible. They want to listen to us and also ensure that your activities can be adaptable as possible. So if you've already had some funding from, let's say, the Paul Hamlin Foundation, Esme Fairbairn, or any London funder, do reach out to them and see if they can be flexible with the funding that they've already given you. At the same time, if you do apply to any of these funds and you find that you need to shift some of your budget lines or shift how you respond, I think they're going to be very willing for you to do that. So it's really just seeing how best, trusting you as the organizations to respond as you see fit. Top 5 grants to apply for. I've just put, so we've only got 10 minutes, I've put the top 5 that I think most creative organisations or social enterprises, particularly in East London, could apply for. Some of the deadlines are coming quite soon, and I'll go through them. The first one is the London Community Response Fund. I would urge anyone who is in this room, if you haven't already, just take a look at that. They are responding quite quickly. The turnaround is about 2 weeks, and the remit here is to help you deliver your objectives differently. So they're taking into account that COVID sort of meant that a lot of us are having different restrictions, but you still might want to deliver some work with your beneficiaries, and looking at how you can do that differently. For example, if you are an art gallery and you find that actually you had quite a few exhibitions lined up, you might want to do that virtually online. So that this is a great opportunity to sort of apply for this fund, to test and to see if you can actually pivot and deliver it in a different way. And the funds can pay for staff costs, any IT that you need. So if you find that you might not have the right tech or the right type of computer. I mean, I found out yesterday that I couldn't download any of the updated Apple softwares because my laptop's over 8 years old. If you're like that, then this is a good fund for you to actually, maybe buy some new resources to help you work efficiently and effectively. It's up to 50K, so it's not small money. And it can, yeah, so the priorities are in this, for anyone who can't really see the screen, I'll read them out. If you're an organization that works around advice, so advising maybe marginally excluded groups, for example. If you work in the arts and culture sector, which I think a lot of people in this call probably work in that area, you'll be eligible. If you work is around children and young people, domestic abuse, equity and inclusion, food, the homeless, infrastructure. So if you're a second tier organization that advises others, you'd be eligible. People at risk, and refugee and migrants. So this is quite a wide ranging fund, and I think I quite like this fund, and as I said, I would encourage you all to at least try to apply for it. If you're a food organization and for example, you're pivoted to support your community kitchen, and you now need to support maybe some vulnerable people, let's say you're cooking for the homeless, then I encourage you to also apply for wave 1 of this fund. You'll see it on their website, that allows you to maybe find access to or buy some of the food products that you might need to deliver food to the vulnerable. So but otherwise, yeah, this fund is quite exciting. If you have any questions on it, do send some questions on the chat and I'll try and answer as best as I can. And I'll go to the next one. This is the Arts Council England Fund, for those who are not in the national portfolio. The deadline is next week. And if you work in the creative sector and have experience of delivering publicly funded arts, then this is for you. I would say that if you haven't already, do go onto the Grantium website. That's the website where you have to get approval to be eligible to apply. And it takes about maybe a couple of minutes to do, and it just makes sure that you've got your registration details, whether you're a charity or whether you're a company limited by guarantee. So they want those details. They want a copy of your M&As, your constitution, and then they'll send you an email to say yes, you can apply for this fund. And then you've got a couple of days to apply. So this fund will help you pay for some of your rent and staff costs, which I think a lot of arts organisations are struggling with right now, especially in Hackney and Fish Island. Some of your overheads and any of the costs that you need to sustain yourself for the next 6 months. It does say in the criteria that you have to have had some experience delivering public funded work. They have adapted this in that you don't necessarily have to have received grant funding from the Arts Council, but you could have collaborated and delivered work together with someone who has received funds. So when you do read the guidelines, the guideline that was not updated 2 weeks ago will be more strict. So I think they've updated that to make it a little bit more open. So if you have any questions on that, do email myself or Charlie or on the chat, and I can clarify. So I think this is a good fund as well, and you've got a couple of days, so if you have any time over the weekend, I'd say go for it. And 35k, it's also not little money. The next one is Youth Music Emergency Fund, and this is for organisations that are involved in music making. So you might be a social enterprise that teaches young people how to make music, or you might be delivering music in different ways with young people. I know there are a lot of creative organisations, again, in Hackney and Fish Island, also just generally in Tower Hamlets and Hackney, as well as local boroughs that this would fit in. And obviously, being a creative enterprise zone, there might also be new organisations that just set up recently that might be eligible. It'll help you with your cash flow, to maintain your services, and again, adapting your services. So most of these application forms are about 2 pages and will take you a couple of hours to do. So this is, and if you need the link, it's in the chat, so you can actually click through now. The fourth one is a Heritage Emergency Fund. This is for the heritage sector, so it's more, it's quite specific. But again, there are lots of organisations that are in some way protecting some kind of heritage, tangible or intangible. It's up to £50,000. It's rolling. It's just opened recently, actually. So one of the criteria is that you should have received some kind of grant from them, recently meaning the last 10 years, actually. so if you can check with your fellow board members or staff if over the last 10 years you've already received some grant from them, that will make you eligible to apply. But it makes sure, it allows you to at least get some funding in to actually protect the heritage work that you're doing currently. Great. So I hope Charlie will tell me if I'm overrunning. The number 5 is the Coronavirus Mental Health Response Fund. I've put this here because almost in all conversations I've had or meetings I've had, the need for mental health support has come up, particularly because we're all living in quite unique circumstances right now. And if we can work collaboratively to kind of introduce responses to that would be fantastic. So, and I think creative organisations are quite good at doing that anyway. So this fund is a £50,000 fund to scale up activity, adapt existing activity, or introduce a new way to respond to mental health needs of communities right now. You can apply as a consortium. So, for example, in Hackney and Fish Island, I'm aware that there was, for example, a climbing group that met to support individuals who were at risk of or needed mental health support. And there's also a life drawing class that does something similar. So it could be a collaboration to apply for a fund like this, or link up with some other providers. So yeah, I would encourage organisations to think about how they could utilise this fund, because I think it's quite an important part of our existence right now. The fund's just opened, and they'll keep it rolling. So I would say go for it. Do keep an eye out for some funds that are still, some have just paused because I think they've been inundated, and I think they'll reopen, and some are still waiting for money to come from the government to fill their pot, and then they will create different, I think, strands for the charity and social enterprise sectors. So one is the National Lottery Community Fund. I think they should be receiving roughly £300 million. Or they might have received it and haven't told us yet. But yeah, that should be a fund that would most of you will be eligible for. So as I mentioned, just keep an eye out for that. Then there's a charities aid fund as well, charity aid foundation fund. That's the coronavirus emergency fund. That unfortunately just paused, but I think they will reopen sometime soon. That'll be roughly about £10,000 that you can use to meet some of your ongoing costs. The Sports England support package, that's actually open right now. I've put this here because a lot of organisations within Hackney and Fish Island are working also in the sports arena, and also in Hackney, of course. So you might be a football social enterprise, or a climbing, or a gym that right now maybe you're not able to deliver your services, but you might want to, again, think about how you can do that differently, maybe virtually, or it can just help you with some of your cash flow at the moment. And that's £195 million in that pot. So again, if any of you can apply for that, I'll be happy if that goes to some of the organisations here in East London. That'll be great. And then there's the Outdoor Arts Sector Support Fund that just closed recently, and I'm quite confident that will open again. Keep an eye out for that. It's mainly linked to outdoor arts, meaning things like outdoor festivals and curation of creative events like that. But again, after the links in the chat, if you want to have a little bit of a read on what that is for. I'm sorry about the colour here. So to keep up to date and get extra support, I would say that the Community Business Mutual Aid website's very, very good. A lot of the organisations probably on this chart are community businesses anyway, and it's really a great platform to get support, whether it's someone to look through your draft or your application form. It's a great place for some trainings. For example, if you suddenly need to do a cash flow forecast and you're struggling with that, there are weekly, actually daily webinars on various subjects, and you can also propose a theme if you're having any issues, and they'll help you try and meet that, or you can do that collectively. And most of the funds that are coming up tend to end up on Pioneer's Post, and it's almost daily that you'll find the latest grant. And as I mentioned, most of the grants will the deadlines come quite quickly, so it might open on a Monday, and then by next week there'll be the deadline. So do just keep an eye out on Pioneer's Post for the latest grants. It's also important to note that a lot of funders right now are trying to fund an emergency response. In the next few months, based on some of the feedback they're getting, they're going to then structure, especially London funders, structure a way to support build a resilience to sort of try and get organisations back up on their feet. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that does occur. So I guess this is just the start of some of the support that hopefully we will get. And then there is Unlimited, who have got some also great support on again on training and also legal advice on contracts that you might have that you might need support on, some legal advice on how maybe you can respond to some of your ongoing contractual arrangements with maybe your landlord or any other suppliers that you might have. So it's also pretty useful. And I realized I just sort of went through that quite quickly. So if you have any questions, do feel free to email me at any time. If I can support, I will. Happy to, and happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Juliet. That was really, really useful, and I think